Hi everybody. So today's tutorial is an edit inspired by Alessio Albi. He's an Italian photographer. He's been really inspiring me lately to create these interesting portraits featuring nature and lots of color and shadows. He's an incredible photographer. You should check him out at Alessio Albi if you don't know his work. By no means am I an expert in Alessio's editing style. I don't know him personally. I don't know what he likes to do with his editing process. I don't know how that works specifically, but I have done a lot of experimentation in Photoshop to create a similar look. So this is not to discount him as a photographer by any means. This is just to create an image in a similar style that's inspired by his work. So, little disclaimer. So here we have an image of my friend Marina. This was taken in San Diego on a Canon 5D Mark IV with a 50mm 1.2 lens. Here I have it in Lightroom in case you are curious about the specs. 50mm. This was shot at 2.0 at 1/800th of a second, ISO 100. So here it is in Lightroom. So I've just taken it and brought it into Photoshop. So here we go, completely raw image. Pretty beautiful. Marina is amazing. You follow her on Instagram at mablunk. So here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by, actually I don't want to start with creating a new layer. I'm going to duplicate the background layer. So here we are in Photoshop. I'm going to say Command J and duplicate the background layer. So now we have our background and we have our layer 1. And what I'm going to do this first layer is I'm going to create a sharpening layer. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass. And what this is going to bring up a dialog box. And we want to choose a high pass of 5 pixels. Great, so say OK. Beautiful, we're done. No. So you're like, okay, why is this gray? Well, all you have to do is go to your blending modes. These here are your blending modes. So in pretty much in Photoshop, in any layer, you can choose a different blending mode. And for this one, we want to choose overlay. Nice. So this now is a sharpening layer. If I make this invisible for a minute, you can see it just creates this really nice, super sharp effect. So this was shot at a really wide aperture, so we just want to make sure that all of her face is extremely sharp, right? Okay, so now after creating that sharpening layer, I'm going to create a new layer by clicking this little square down here. That creates a blank layer. Okay, so now we're going to zoom in, and I'm zooming in by holding the space bar and the command button. I get this little plus, and I'm just clicking. I'm using a Wacom tablet, by the way, so in order to zoom in on the Wacom, you just click. If you had a mouse, you could also just hold the space bar and the command key and just click, and you're zoomed right in. So here we are. To zoom out, you hold the space bar and the option key, and it's the same idea. Click, zoom out. There we go. So what we're doing now is we're just looking for some little spots on her skin that might be distracting, and we're going to take those out. Now the wonderful thing about Marina is she basically has nothing, there's nothing to remove, honestly, especially for this style of portrait. Like we see all these hairs everywhere and all of this stuff, but that's totally fine for this that's totally fine for this style of portrait. I absolutely have no problem with that, and I'm not going to do a lot of retouching on her skin. In fact, I'm not going to do really anything. There are just a couple spots that I might take out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the healing brush tool, which is over here. I'm going to say healing brush. The keyboard shortcut is J, so you could just click J. And I'm going to make this pretty small. You can do this really easily by holding Control and Option and dragging from left to right. It'll get really big or really small. So you make it the size you want. Okay, so then we're going to zoom in by spacebar, command, and clicking. And there's just this little spot here that I think, it's a little bit too far. This little spot here that I think could be removed. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And how you use the healing brush tool, you hold Option to sample an area nearby, and you just paint that away. Beautiful. So now, this is before and after. It's just a little bit of light reflecting off skin that's just a little bit distracting. Same idea here. This little bit in her nose that I don't know, it's just a little bit distracting. So we can sort of clean that up, make that a little bit better. So again, I'm just sampling nearby and I'm just painting. Okay, we're gonna zoom out and see what that did. Yeah, see, that just like cleans that up a little bit. Okay, so I mean, really, that's all I feel I need to do for this image, because for our style, it's very natural and I don't want to do a lot of skin editing. Okay, so here we go for color. Now for color, I like to start with selective color. Now here I have my adjustments box right here. In order to create a new adjustment layer, normally you can go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and we're going to go down to Selective Color and say OK. So now we have this dialog box for selective color. Okay, so the way selective color works is you have all these colors which you can isolate a color and then affect that color however you like. So here we have the reds. So if we move these sliders, it's only going to affect the reds. So the way that I started with selective color was I would just drag from left to right, see what you like better. Like, as you can see, this red makes her really red and saturated. This sort of like desaturates her and makes her look really cold. I like adding some red into the red. Same idea with magenta. Magenta's tricky, it's pretty strong, so I usually add just a little bit of magenta. Yellow, usually a little bit of yellow is nice, but for this image, I think I'm going to take a little bit of yellow out. Alessio's models, or his method of editing skin, he usually creates a pretty, it's a really beautiful white color to his skin. So I think just adding a little bit of blue in the yellow helps to create that effect. Now we can also start creating that effect by adding some white into the skin. So here we're going to add a little bit of white to the reds. Now let's go to the yellows and see how they're looking. So this is pretty much affecting the plants because the computer's reading the plants as yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of red, just so a little red this way on the cyan. It's cyan this way and it's red this way. So let's see what the magenta does. I think I'll take a little bit of magenta out, yeah. And let's see, again, I'm gonna add a little bit of blue in the yellow, and I'm gonna add some more white to the yellow. Great. So I'm gonna skip greens, cyans, blues, magentas, because I'm not really interested in those colors in this image. We're gonna go straight to whites. So now these bottom three, whites, neutrals, and blacks, affect your highlights, midtones, and shadows. So we're gonna go to the whites. Yeah, so see, this is really affecting the sky and like some parts of her face. So I like to add a little bit of cyan because the sky is blue and I want to recreate that. This sort of like makes the highlight disappear and it makes her face look really flat. So I don't like adding magenta. I think we can add a little bit of green. Let's see, the yellow. Again, I really like adding blue to the yellow because it makes the highlights pop. And again, this makes her really flat, so we don't want to add black to the whites. We want to add white to the whites because that'll make those highlights pop. Okay, neutrals. Let's see. Neutrals really, really affects your image, so you have to really be careful with how much you're changing in here. So I'm going to add a little bit of red into the neutrals. And I think I'll add a little bit of green and a little bit of blue. Yeah, that looks nice. So also I like adding white to the neutrals, again, to get that really nice ivory skin. Okay, so here we go. So blacks. I like adding cyan to the blacks. So I'll add a little bit of cyan. Black, again, really touchy. So we don't want to add too much because then she just looks like a bunch of red something. I don't know. So add some cyan. I'm going to say maybe like 1. Okay. Magenta, again, magenta really affects it, but I like that look, so I'm going to say 1. Yellow, blue, I think a little bit of yellow, and then always a little bit of black, just to give that detail. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Yeah, so it's already looking pretty cool. The next step is curves. So I'm going to click curves to add curves. Again, you would just go to Layer, new adjustment layer, and curves. Okay, great. So click OK. Here we go. We have our curves. Curves, in my opinion, are magic. Like, this is where the magic happens. So what I like to do is start here with the midtones. Okay, I'm going to raise that up a little bit, then I'm going to raise the highlights. And what I like to do with my curves, the way I use curves is to enhance detail, right? So I don't want to do anything that flattens her out or makes her look super edited or strange. I want to create a curve that really enhances detail. So I'm going to raise the blacks a little bit, bring down the black point, great. So this is looking pretty cool. Maybe bring this down a little bit. So let's see what this is doing. Yeah, so you can already see there's a lot more detail, but that's a little bit too much, I think. Yeah, that's better. Maybe bring this down a little bit more. Let's see. Yeah, that's better. I think that's pretty cool. Maybe bring this down a little bit and maybe this one down a little bit just so it's not so extreme. Yeah, I'm liking that. Okay, so let's go back to our original. So you can see your original just by hovering over this little eye down here on your background layer, holding Option and clicking. Yeah, so already she's looking pretty cool. So I'm going to go back into my selective color. This is what's great. You can go back in at any time. I'm going to go back to our reds and just sort of see if we can play around a little bit with these reds. So I think I'm going to add actually a little bit of black to the reds and maybe a little bit of cyan into the reds just to see what that does. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty cool. Okay, so let's again check it out. Looking pretty cool. I'm gonna go back in here. I think I changed my mind. I'll add a little bit of red back into that. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so the thing about these portraits is you really want to enhance the detail of the model, and what Alessio does a lot is he works with models' hair. So you can see we have her hair in the plants and whatnot, but he also uses their features and really features their features in the portraits, and it's just a really beautiful technique of creating art, right? So if that makes no sense at all, basically what I'm getting at is Marina has beautiful freckles, so we're going to really create an effect that accentuates that. So how you do that is you create a black and white layer, okay? And you change the blending mode to luminosity. And here in your black and white layer, you have all of these levels. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the luminosity of the red, okay? And you're like, what are you doing? It's okay, don't worry. What we're going to do is we're going to go here to the layer mask. This is the layer mask on our black and white layer. And I'm going to say hold shift and click delete. And you get this dialog box with fill. We want to make sure black is selected and click OK. So now this little layer mask is black, which means you can't see what's happening, okay? Which is good because we don't want all of the reds to lose their luminance, right? We only want the freckles to lose their luminance. So you can do this a couple of ways. What I like to do is grab a brush tool, okay? So grab a brush tool. My brush is at 100%, flow is at 10%. It's a really nice soft brush. You can make this bigger or smaller with the same technique we talked about earlier, holding Control and Option and dragging from left to right. You can also make it harder and softer by dragging from bottom to top vertically. So right now we're at 0% hardness, really soft brush. Great. So make sure you're on your layer mask. We're going to click the X. Now this changes what we're painting with to black and white. So sorry, we're going to click D which will make this black and white, and then X changes your color, black and white, black and white. So in order to make the freckles pop, we want to paint with white on our layer mask, okay? So we're going to zoom in pretty close, oops, too close, with a really small brush, and we're just going to lightly paint over these freckles. Now you can also do this by creating a selective color mask and just select out the color, but I find that sometimes creates a really cool effect, but I also find that it's really difficult to select a color that encompasses all of the freckles, since they're so different and they vary so much in their color. So what I find is, like, even if you do create a pretty nice selective color mask, you end up having to paint in some freckles anyway. So I find it's almost easier to just start painting them in and not have to worry about creating a selective color mask. But you can do it either way. So we're just painting in these freckles. Oops, okay, great. So let's see what this is doing, if it's doing anything. So you can see it's pretty slight. I think I might go back over these, paint a little bit more, just to like really enhance the skin, really enhance these beautiful freckles, make them pop. Okay. Go up here, maybe hit some of these guys so they're not left out, they don't feel sad. Okay, great. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's zoom out and see what this is doing. Okay, let's see. So you can see it creates a little pop, and it's not unnatural at all. We don't want it to be like, oh god, what's happening? Oops. So yeah, make sure you're selected on your layer mask. I think I'll add a little bit more here. Right, I mean, I want this to just look like, oh wow, she's got some beautiful freckles. That's a really cool picture. So if you hold shift and click on your layer mask, you can see what it looks like before the mask. If you click again, you can see what it looks like after. If you click this eyeball, you can see before and after with the layer mask. So what I like is also painting a little bit over the lips, just to bring in some more color, bring in some more detail. So let's see what that did. Beautiful. So you can see that we've given her some more color to her freckles. Yeah, especially if we zoom out, you can really see the difference. So this is what it was before, okay? And this is what it is after. And I'm pretty happy with this image. I think it looks pretty good. Again, this is inspired by Alessio's work. Not at all is it an accurate representation of his editing style or even his work. It's something that's inspired. And I think it's really important as a photographer to look at pictures and, you know, find photographers that inspire you and bring something from them into your work, right? It's like looking at architecture, looking at visual art, going to a concert, listening to music. Any of that sort of artistic experience informs your own artwork and can have a really huge effect on your work and your interests. So anyway, so I'll just show you this again. Before, after, before, after, and we'll go ahead and stop here for now. And I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching. Give Alessio a follow, give Marina a follow, and thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like, and have a great one. Ciao.